We start a little bit late, so we're going to skip some introduction and we're going to go straight to the point. But before that, good morning everyone. I'm Laimonas and welcome to the session called Hybrid Project Management. Excellence behind a buzzword. This is a little bit catchy slogan I came up with half a year ago when we started with my colleagues. We started to talk about project management and the methodologies, and then maybe sometimes they work together. And this, in a way, became a buzzword. But then I started to dig deeper and really see maybe it's not really a buzzword. It's actually the true project management excellence. How can you combine few different ways of work into one single, and then yet achieve a very great result? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the theory. Don't be scared, it's going to be very high level. And in the end I will, and of course the most important thing today is to share the success story with you and to look what are the key takeaways and just something for you to take away and maybe try to implement it by yourself. And we will have 5, maybe a little bit more minutes for the questions in the very end of the session. Usually when the presenters come and share their experience in these kind of events, they share their own experience, but my own experience is that we forget to talk about the context. In what particular situation this way of work did succeed or did fail. So I just want to emphasize a few things. When we talk about that we succeeded with something or we didn't, sometimes we have to mention what was the size of organization where we do the project. Do you come from large enterprise organization, or maybe you come from small, medium business where you have 10, 20 people in a company and you can be pretty more or less flexible about your work. However, at the same time, if you come from enterprise, usually you have lots of policies, lots of standards you have to obey, and your experience with the project management will be different. Then we could also say, do you work with external requesters or internal requesters? If you develop your project in-house and you don't have to report externally, well, my own experience is that you are more flexible about your way of work. At the same time, if you report your projects externally, it means that other companies buy service from you and you deliver your projects, then you are more strict about your deliverables, about your flexibility and things like that. The budget is also important. When we share our experience, well, Agile did work here, or Waterfall failed there, do we mean that we work with something worth of 10,000 euros, or we work with a project worth 2 million euros? Sometimes I catch myself thinking whether if I was an executive and I'm presented a project which is worth in, let's say, the estimated budget for the project is 2 million euros, and just because of Agile projects having a very high level of risk at the very beginning of the project, would I sign it off if my project manager said, well, we're going to do it Agile, we are still not sure about the scope, but we're going to succeed? Well, I thought maybe not. Maybe I would like to see the more detailed plan and to see more details on the scope before I sign it off, because it's 2 million euro and it's a high risk. Also public and private, and we have a few speakers in this conference also talking about the experience in the public sector. So maybe you should go there, and if you don't have any experience in public, and see how their experience is different from if you work only in the private sector. Risk of tolerance. And this is very much related to not only to the budget, like if you have 2 million euro worth project and high level of risk, maybe you would like to run project more safely. If you only run a small project, maybe you can be more flexible about tolerance of the risk. But it's also very related to the culture. Let's say if we go to the east, let's say India, we may find that these kind of cultural countries are less tolerant to risks. So they may choose the more safe methodology to run their projects. At the same time, if we go west are more tolerant to risk, so they tend to risk more. And so sometimes with smaller teams, Agile works. With the large teams, you have to think about more smart solutions, maybe hybrid project management. So if you have 10 people in your team, just put them in one room, and then you may say that you are done. But if you have 200 people, you may deal with the different locations, different cultures, different floors, and other types of difficulties. So your project management experience will be different depending on these artifacts. And in the end, the culture. When we speak about culture, is not only that Indian people or Indian developers tend to work differently from the Western developers. And also project management culture. Do people in your organization understand what the project management is? Do they treat project managers as just people who do nothing, or they know what in particular they do and what kind of challenges they take on? So if you have more experience from these 7 perspectives in a small companies, in the large companies, with different cultures, with different budgets, you ran small projects, big projects, then you can try to think and adopt this experience to the particular situation and be as creative as possible by combining few different approaches when it comes to team management or stakeholder management. So the more experience with different types of artifacts you have, the more creative you can be. So this is the context. But before we go on, I would like to speak also about a few more things. Is a project management as such, and also about the creativity. So project management, what it is. From the academic perspective, it's a discipline, right? So you can attend a university or you can attend a course, and there's a course called project management, and they teach you what it is, right? But in the project management body of knowledge, they say that project management is application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. I thought maybe meeting project requirements is not the main thing in the project management, so I did my own. I did adjust this a little bit. So actually, you try to meet the project goal. If you know what you need to achieve, you just go there and do whatever is necessary to achieve it. Then creativity, according to Wikipedia, is a phenomenon whereby something new or somehow valuable is formed, such as idea, scientific theory, invention. And then I thought, I like this, etc. So you could actually continue with whatever you want. And I thought, well, maybe if Wikipedia has end of thinking capacity, which this is what the ETC stands for, maybe we should just help Wikipedia by defining what the creativity is, and I let myself to put hybrid project management in the end of the sentence. Why not? So if we say that hybrid project management is where the context does matter, so you can assess the context and apply tools, skills, and your project management knowledge, and be creative about it. So this is what the takeaway number 1 is. The project management excellence comes from project managers' ability to assess the context. So process versus the life cycle, or the process versus the methodology. For me, every project is the same process, no matter what methodology you use. It has to start, right? You have to initiate it. You have to plan it, no matter how, but you have to plan it. And execute it, control, and close. Does anyone disagree? So this is the process. Now, what's the difference between this and this? This says what you need to do if you run a project. This is the process. I do this, 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 this. Now, this tells a little bit how you do it. So it does presuppose that you start the project, you plan it, you control it and execute somehow in one single small process or sub-process, and then you close it. So it does say that a little bit how, but if you go like this, it still says that you have to initiate it, you have to plan it, you have to execute, monitor, and close it, but it does also say how you do it. So the difference between the process and the methodology is that the process describes the start and the end, and what kind of artifacts you have to have during this process, and then how you run this, how you execute the project, how you plan the project, what do you need to do in the initiation, what do you need to do in the closing. This is the methodology. So I hope you got this clear view now, what is the difference between the process and the methodology. So let's say we initiate the project by completing the project charter. This is the document which says the goal is like this, the objectives of the project are like that, the estimated budget for the project is this. And then we plan it, we execute it in iterations. This is the agile way of doing the project, one of the agile ways. So the second takeaway I would like to stress for you today during this presentation is that there is only one project management process, regardless of the life cycle used, or regardless of the methodology used. Every project starts, every project ends. And then how you do it inside of it, it's your own creativity. All right, so this is the hot topic, Agile or Waterfall. Usually when we attend our event, Agile tour, we speak more about Agile and how Waterfall is bad. I was asked to stress Waterfall is bad by Vaidas, the president. Is he here? No? So, but what I want to talk is not, there is no good or bad. It's just what something works or doesn't. And then it's your experience as a project manager experience should drive you through the way where you could say, okay, in this particular situation, assessing the context, I'm going to do Agile. Or in this particular context, with a big team, with a risky project, maybe the waterfall is better. So let's just look. Oh, right, I forgot I have the slide, but I gave this pretty similar presentation in May in another event called Project Management Spring. And one colleague of mine, he took a picture of me and put it on Facebook. And he says, can't decide between Agile or Waterfall, Laimonas explains hybrid project management. And then I really like this comment. See, here? Programming, motherfucker. I'm not sure if I can say that loud, but still you read it. And I was very curious what this link is. And then of course, I click the link and I see, programming, motherfucker, do you speak it? You probably saw Pulp Fiction, everyone. We're a community of programmers who have been humiliated by software development methodologies for years. We are tired of XP, Kanban, you name it. So they just want to sit down and program and do the stuff by themselves. But my answer to this guy was, enterprise, motherfucker, do you speak it? Seriously, I mean, if you do the enterprise level project, you just cannot get away without understanding how you deliver, what artifacts you need to achieve. You just cannot sit. It's very unlikely that 5 people can deliver enterprise level project. If you have different experience, I will be very happy to listen for you during the coffee break. Please share it with me. But I've been doing small projects. I've been doing also enterprise level projects. So I just say, there's simply not possible to do the project without the project manager in the enterprise environment. I also had an interesting discussion this week with my colleague from Minsk, and he said, why do we need managers at all? I mean, if we have hired very clever and smart developers, they will deliver. Why do we need project managers? And my answer was, because the project managers does the ugly stuff for the developers, so the developers can focus on what they really can do the best. I'm not sure if I did convince him, but it's up to him. Anyway, so let's get back to the Agile part, right? And what is similar and different between waterfall or traditional way of doing the projects and the Agile? The few things are similar, actually. The process is similar, yeah. No matter how we do the project, we start it and we end it. And the medium, people. In both ways of working, we manage people. We manage communication, we manage stakeholders, all right? What's different is the language. And this is what a lot of people drive nuts, especially those who are very old-fashioned traditional project managers. I mean, They say, why did you have this Scrum Master and Product Owner instead of just calling them Project Manager? Why do we have 2 roles instead of 1 role? And things like that. But it does differ because it's different philosophy and the life cycle. So the methodology. We do projects differently. Even though we start and end in the same way, we execute differently. We have iterations, we have lessons learned, not in the end of the project, we have lessons learned after each iteration. And we have different roles and we have different metrics. That's pretty obvious as well. By the way, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, probably 3 years ago, I gave a speech in Agile Tour about the metrics, how to combine Agile metrics with traditional, or how to run project in Agile and at the same time to report it in a traditional way in a corporate environment. Anyway, so let's start by waterfall, the good and the bad. So first, what is waterfall? It's a detailed planning in the very beginning. It's that you do one move and the next move only when you finish the first move. Sometimes you do in parallel, but this is usually what happens with a waterfall. And all steps are laid out and dependencies mapped. So this is where the waterfall is very strong, is that you map out the dependencies and you know the dependencies very well. This is where Agile is a little bit less complementary. All right. Best known for mission safety critical systems based on standards. In my previous company, I spoke to one guy coming from US, and he was like, I was introducing an Agile to him and how we could incorporate Agile methodologies into the standard of being used by the corporation, which was very much traditional way. And he was like, you know, how can you do it? Because if we do the mistakes, people die. Because they developed the software for the military, as an example. So when you have these, maybe you should consider waterfall. Also dealing with physical objects or military development. Again, physical objects. We cannot build a bridge. Well, maybe we could, but we shouldn't build a bridge other way before making a detailed plan how we're going to do it. Detailed designs and things like that. Reliable future project forecast, because we plan in very detail and then we have very, I would say, good data for the future projects. Defined tasks and phases that must be completed in a specific sequence. And criticized for less effective for software development. That's why the Agile comes from the software development area, and or service-based projects. By the way, I did one project where we migrated enterprise service management system from one version to another, and we tried to do it in Agile, and we failed. And I'm not ashamed to state it. Yes, it did fail in Agile way because probably the scope was pretty known, and we could have executed this other way than Agile. So scope changes are very slow because we have planned everything in detail, so we really don't want to get rid of this part where we spend a lot of time to plan it and then, oh, suddenly we have to get rid of it. Oh, that was waste of time. So the scope changes are very slow because we are unwilling to change it. Yeah, and it requires a lot of effort to plan it and before we actually start to work. And I want to move on with Agile. So Agile, I'm not going to go here. I just assume that you know what Agile is. So it's flexible way of work, right? So it's collaboration, adaptability, continuous improvement as we go, right? So these are where we complement it. An iterative project release lifecycle. So we release frequently, we get the feedback, we improve, and we deliver the next iteration with a better way. So, but also as we know that we can complement Agile for something, but we can also criticize. So we complement Agile for software development projects. We say that the Agile way of work does engage people very much because we have to talk during the stand-ups, we have to talk during the planning. We are not assigned to the task. We pick up the task by ourselves. This is the commitment. Quick course correction based on early feedback. So again, small iterations, small releases, we get the feedback, we implement it. Empowers team to work creatively and efficiently, because everyone can actually talk and deliver their point of view on how we work and what kind of product we deliver. But also criticized for not suitable for strictly defined scope and requirements. That is absolutely true. This is the example of the enterprise service management system. We knew the scope very well, so why on earth we did it in Agile? Because we knew what we need to deliver pretty much well. So if you have a scope very well defined, you know what you're going to do, don't do it Agile. Or maybe you could. Continuous hard work on backlog maintenance and technical debt management. This is very important. People think that they're going to just do Agile, it's going to be quick and easy and so on and so forth, but the work with the backlog is a hell of a lot of work. And I had a project where the customer was the actual product owner because they ordered the project for us, and they were managing the requirements. And they thought that in the traditional way, they just write the requirement documentation, they feed it to the team, and the team will deliver. But no, that was a lot of work, and it was constant engagement with the client to refine the requirements, to do the demos and things like that. So the customer didn't actually expect that you will have to be engaged so frequently. High risk due to uncertainty around the triple constraint at the beginning. Yes, of course, you don't plan everything in detail, so how can you be certain that this will be that amount of money required to deliver? Or that you're going to deliver in that time you promise. So this is a high risk. If your project is a very high risk, Agile is criticized for that. Okay, so the takeaway 3 is hybrid project management is application of 2 or more, you can think of more, project management methodologies in a single project. So we have Waterfall, we have Agile, we know where Waterfall is good at, we know where Agile is good at. And then we can think, does this apply to this particular situation? Can we somehow scale it? Let's say one part of the project we do in Agile way, another part of the project we do Waterfall way. So let me just give you a few examples from all over the world. This hybrid project management isn't something I invented. People talk about it. Project management community talk about it. In some other source of information, you could find these kind of titles like Water Scrumfall, Collaborative Model, Our Process, or as I sometimes say it, whatever works. So if you put this Water Scrumfall or even hybrid project management into the search engine, you may get these kind of pictures like requirement is collecting the stories, design wireframes, and then you just do it in Agile way, in iterations, and things like that. Testing and final release. So, probably this is the most interesting part. Okay, how to? Agile Manifesto. Okay, just kidding, I'm not going to show you that. Sometimes what happens in organizations, managers, they come and they say, whoa, let's do Agile. That means no more planning, no more documentation, just start writing the code and complaining. I'm glad it has a name, and then this was your training, and then people go and they try it, and actually what happens, then they come to these kind of events and they share their knowledge without understanding what they did. Well, maybe sometimes it works, but it works in a better way if you know why you did this way, how you did this way, and then you can explain it logically. Agile actually means you do the planning, documentation is still important, but maybe the format differs. And Agile embraces the complaints, right? So this is the feedback we get, and this is how we improve our product. What will you need to run a hybrid project? Firstly, you need to assess the context. This is something I've been stressing from the very beginning. You need to assess the context. Will it work or not in this particular situation? Don't be dogmatic about it. Be pragmatic. Produce project charter to support the hybrid delivery. This means that to write a document that you're going to do the project in a hybrid way. Pick up appropriate methodology for each of the teams. If you have more than one team, maybe one team is more likely to work in Agile way, another is more old-fashioned, so maybe you should apply Waterfall there. Develop single project schedule. This is important for the stakeholders, right? To report it not a messy way, but a united way of report would be better than two different schedules for two different teams. Capture the scope, set up common reporting and metrics, sell this idea to stakeholders. This is a very important part as well. Okay, so you will have challenges because nothing comes easy, right? And the context does matter. And the context does different from the different situations. So the flashback on what WTF, which stands for Waterfall, Scrum, Kanban. If you know the problem and you know the solution, go Waterfall. If you know the problem but you're not certain of the solution, maybe you should consider XP or Scrum. But if you know the problem and the solution, well, sorry, if you don't know both of them, do the lean startup or something similar to that. Agile product lifecycle. I was really willing to skip this because it's pretty obvious. When do we adopt Agile, Scrum, or when we do the Kanban part? So basically for the product development, if you have a new product, you should use the Scrum because probably you will have also a new team building that product. When you go into the product improvement, so your product is already built, you just need to support it and maybe implement new ideas, go for Kanban because it's very self-driven and very, very easy to maintain. Now, if you need another version of that same product, maybe you should consider going back to the Scrum or hiring another team to do it in a Scrum way. Now, if you want just to test your ideas, maybe you should do the lean startup. Why this is important in this presentation? Because the teams also differ. In the project which I did, and I wanted to share the experience with you, I had two teams. One team was these kind of geeks who build the infrastructure, and I had a development team as well. No Bill Gates there. But okay, this is the actual slide. So I had a development team which was dedicated and collocated. What do you say? Šiltnamio sąlygos in Lithuanian for the Scrum. And I had infrastructure team which was virtual and only based on estimated effort basis. So I had some problems there because I could not get a hold of them. Sometimes could not get a hold of them by the time I needed. Okay, so two teams, about 20 people in total, different people, different capabilities, different cultures, different buildings, right? Not that easy. So what actually happened, I just said, guys, keep calm, I'm project manager, I'm going to deal with that. So firstly we had to define a scope. What is the challenge when defining the scope? We have to define a project scope and the product scope. And since we're not going very much into methodological or theoretical part of this talk, I'm not going to say what is the difference, but sometimes you should consider what is the difference between the project scope and the product. Infrastructure requirements. That was pretty easy. You don't build a server 10 times in a different way. You just usually build the server in the same way all the time. So you just need to know the specification of server and just build it. And the product requirements. This was the difficult part because the client came with the 190 pages in a Word document filled with the use cases. And then they say, well, let's do Agile. And say, if you have a documentation of 190 pages, why on earth you want to do Agile? Because you have everything documented, the scope is pretty known, and you will be surprised, well, probably not surprised when you see the last slide. So we did these kind of things, right? Magic behind estimating. Now when you do hybrid, how to estimate it? Well, just the same way you always do. You go to the Agile team and you do this kind of planning of the backlog with the user stories, with the predicting the velocity by picking up the items you know the most and estimating them first. Infrastructure setup. Since you have set up the infrastructure many times, usually you can use the historical data to predict how long it will take you to build 20 servers, right? Because you did it before. The release plan estimating, also this is something big. When the release plan estimating tells you when you're going to finish the project, when is your final release into production plus early life support and closing. And adding the management and coordination. This is the part in Agile missing, right? Usually we just say, we estimate the backlog, but we forget the meetings. We forget to estimate the project manager's effort, if we want to calculate it, of course, and similar. Right? This is the most important slide. This is the next slide is the most important, but the project schedule concept. How we're going to deliver one project from the very end from the very beginning to the very end, combining two different methodologies. So this is the way we discussed with the Scrum team. We're going to do it. This is concept again. I'm not saying we did 4 sprints. This is just for you to understand. Release 1, analysis, planning, development, testing. Sprint 1. After each sprint, we do sprint demo, interim acceptance of the sprint, and deliverables. Interim, it means that within the functionality we have delivered, we have enough to do the testing. However, this is not the final acceptance testing because we cannot do the regression testing, we cannot do the system integration testing. It's not final solution yet. When we do the release, the system integration and acceptance testing comes there. However, while the testers test, we continue with the release 2, sprint 5, and sprint 6. And this is the interesting part. The infrastructure team, they also had their own part in the project, right? They had to deliver the test environment, they had to deliver stage environment or quality assurance, in other words. In total, three environments. We said, we don't need a production environment before we finish sprint 4 in this particular slide, right? Because why we should build it if we don't use it like in 3 or 4 months? It's a waste of resources. So let's build it just when we need it. And then what we did, just because the infrastructure team did not know how to work in Agile, we said, oh, we need the test environment and the stage environment to be finished by the time we finish the first sprint. So when will we need to start with the infrastructure delivery in order to finish on time so that developers who work on the software part of the project are not impeded? So we built these small waterfalls for all the environments, and it did work. It actually did work. This is how it did work in the Microsoft project. Sprint 1, Sprint 1, Sprint 2, Sprint 5. This is because we had to report the project in a traditional way, right, in the Microsoft project. So we said, we're not going to put any details there. We're just going to put Sprint 1, Sprint 2, Sprint 3. And that's all about it. This is how it looked in real. So that was for managers, for audit, for people who make sure that we keep the standards, that we keep the corporate standards, and we deliver the projects in the best possible manner. This was in real. We had a normal Scrum board with the team. We used the sticky notes. Apart from that, we also used Jira, but the team preferred the physical because it was collocated. It was much easier to communicate. This is how the infrastructure team plan looked like. Yeah, we have to install Linux, we have to install SQL, configure, cluster, things like that, right? So this is just a snapshot, of course, of the big project plan or project schedule we built for the infrastructure team. And philosophical part of this delivery is that in the future, it would be great to deliver, to bring the Agile philosophy into infrastructure delivery. Because why not? Why not to scale? Why? Because in a traditional way, we work like from the bottom up. In Agile way, we scale it vertically. So we start a little bit of physical design, we start a little bit of software, we do a little bit design and specification, and this is what drives people nuts from the infrastructure world. They just say, well, this is the bird language. I have no idea. I mean, why we should, if we know that we're going to build 20 servers, why on earth we should build 3 first and then another 3, just do it in one go. So this was the difficult part, but however, we reached the agreement that at least two environments first and the production later. And it did work, because actually some configuration for the production did change on the way when we did testing. Right, I'm going to skip this part because you know how to manage the teams probably, right? In Agile, this is the 5 dysfunctions of the team and how to deal with those. It took a little bit more time from other parts. Important thing to do with the team is to set the ground rules. This is just one example how to do it, that you have a clear message to the team how you work and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. This is just to keep the team efficient and to avoid the discussions, was it good or bad what we did? If someone is late, this is not acceptable to the meeting because we agreed. Or we agreed that Fridays we work from home, and that is absolutely fine. Everyone knows that Fridays we work from home, and that's okay. Another thing you would like to in a previous discussion, I see the time. In the previous discussion, the presenter said about the acceptance criteria. In Agile world, we use most of the time definition of done, right? So we have to agree with the team, what is your definition of done to keep the quality high level? And again, to limit the possibility of useless talks between the developers or between the project manager and the delivery team. If we agree that this is definition of done, so that let's say 90% of our code is covered by the unit tests, this is the agreement and we have to live up with it. This is a lot of text, but you will have the slides, so you will be able to read it. This is, and again, this is just an example how to do that. Okay, one of the last slides today is the hybrid effect. What effect you can expect if you try this out? So, and this is my experience, you may have other. First thing is a cultural shock for the delivery teams, especially for the infrastructure. Usually you don't say, I mean, when I said to the infrastructure team, oh, with the developers we work Agile, and they go, what is that? Dependency mapping challenge. This is difficult when you have to map dependencies between Agile team and the infrastructure team. This is one of the biggest difficulties I have approached. Also, little waste on planning, first iteration only. This was very difficult with the client because the project was pretty big in a budget. So we only estimated the first iteration, and we say, okay, we do this Agile, so come on, let's not spend our time to estimate everything. Let's estimate the first iteration, and based on that estimate, let's assume that the whole project will take that amount of time and that amount of money. That was difficult, but look at that. 40% of initial requirements were replaced based on looped feedback cycle. So remember those 190 pages of use cases we received in the very beginning? 40% of that was removed. Whenever we did the demo, we get the feedback, we remove requirements for the next iteration, we add new requirements, we replace the requirements. So this is the fundamental part, or the very big value of you doing the project for the software development in a small team, in a collocated team, in Agile way. Another two things, high quality and robust solution. Again, definition of done and focus on the quality and making sure the quality is not compromised will let you build a robust and a high quality solution. Initial scope delivered 3 weeks early. Again, building efficient team who knows what we're gonna deliver, having the release plan, good communication, conflict solving, will let you do the better job. And we finished earlier, 3 weeks. Maybe that's not too much. However, 3 weeks, if you translate those 3 weeks into money, it's quite a lot. Happy client, happy team, next offer. And we did receive to do the next project right away from the same client because they saw that this team is efficient and we need to take the most of it. This team can deliver and deliver efficiently. And we still, by doing this hybrid project in a hybrid way, we still met the corporate audit and regulation requirements because we did have a Microsoft project in place. We did have project charter. We did have all the artifacts we had to have. Takeaway 4, don't look for one process or one methodology to fit every situation. Again, assess the context and be creative about it. But still you have to choose one dominant methodology, because in that particular schedule concept, we had agile driven way, right? So we had agile schedule, and then based on agile, when do we need infrastructure to deliver, that we build the infrastructure part. Bring agile values to hardware development. This is I believe this is what we as agile ambassadors should do. If something doesn't work, don't stick with it. Don't be dogmatic, be pragmatic, as I said. Be creative about delivery and focus on value. Very much corresponds to the upper one. Don't stick with something doesn't work. Or don't stick to, yes, I know. And call it enterprise. It sounds good. All right? So creativity comes from everything you can assess and apply your best skills to it. There is only one process, start, end, despite how you do it. So the methodology is a different thing. Hybrid project management is a combination of few methodologies in one single project. And the future challenge I want to leave you with is how we deal with the best practice. Because currently the hybrid project management is not yet a best practice. But as I said, what is the best practice is like wine. There is no good or bad wine. It's the wine you like or you don't like, right? But in order to use this hybrid, you have to try out a lot of wines before you can say that this wine is good or bad. You cannot just try one wine and say, okay, this one is good. I will continue drinking this wine for the rest of my life. Try a lot of wines, then you can decide. And this is the end of my thinking capacity today. I'm sorry to take a little bit longer than expected.